Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are from C class of 2020 and today we'd like to present the summary of Introduction to Psycholinguistics by Matthew G. Drexler. Our members are Aulia Paradila, Imbuh Giri Mukti, Risma Novita, Noor Azizah, and me, Risna. The first material is language characteristic. There are 6 types. First one is semanticity, arbitrariness, discreteness, displacement, duality of patterning, and generativity. And for the explanation will be delivered by Olivia Paradila. So Olive, time is yours.
Okay, Risna, thank you. So the first one is language characteristics. Description of language often appeal to Charles Hockett's design features, a set of central, possibly necessary design features could include the following, such as semanticity, arbitrariness, discreteness, displacement, the duality of patterning, and generativity. Okay, let's consider each of these in turn. So the first one, semanticity. So this occurs at multiple levels in languages, as individual words can be assigned particular meanings and so can no longer expressions that contain more than one word. The next one, arbitrariness. So, for example, the word that goes with an object need to resemble the real object in any way. One result of this is that names for objects can be completely different across languages. The name could be changed as long as everyone agreed, and the name change would not affect the ability to express the concept in the language. Okay, the third one is discreteness. Despite all of the vast differences between speakers and differences within speakers over time, people who speak the same language will fit every sound made by every speaker into one of the available categories. Okay, next slide. Okay, thank you. The next one is displacement. So it refers to a language's ability to convey information about events out happening outside of the speaker, or spatial displacement, about events that happen before the moment when the person speaks and events that have not yet taken place as the person is speaking. Or we can call it temporal displacement. And different languages accomplish displacement in different ways. English has a system of auxiliary verbs such as will, was, were, had, and affixes to signal when an event occurred relative to the moment of speaking or relative to other events. Okay, the next one is duality of patterning. So, for example, as a collection of phonemes and as a set of words. Normally, we see it through the phonemes and the individual word sounds to meaning that a speaker is trying to convey, but each of these kinds of patterns, speech sounds or phonemes and words can be detected if we decide to pay attention to the form of the speaker's message rather than its meaning. Okay, the last one is generativity. So it refers to the fact that languages have a fixed number of symbols, but a very large and potentially infinite number of messages that can be created by combining those symbols in different patterns. Okay, that's all for me. I'll give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Olive. For the next material will be delivered by Noor Azizah. So Azizah, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, moderator. So the next one is grammar, language, origins, and non-human communication system. According to the continuity hypothesis, language skills are closely related to pre-existing communicative abilities and represent a relatively modest improvement over them. Our language abilities are qualitatively different from more basic communication systems. That is, humans have communication abilities that are not present in other, more primitive systems. Um, Research on communication abilities in apes, there is no data to prove that other apes cannot communicate linguistically. Human forms of communication can from primitive animal form of communication. Apes and monkeys provide a useful comparison with humans because some apes, such as chimpanzees, have a very close relationship with humans. Monkeys and apes are also highly intelligent, making them good candidates for sharing some of the complex abilities involved in producing and understanding language. This research also showed sebelumnya. Okay. This research also showed that apes develop communication skill using gesture and lexigram. Their ability to understand language is also influenced by the environment in which they are located. Next slide, please. Okay, monkeys don't talk. The acquisition of language-related or language-like behaviors in apes varies greatly from one animal to another. This fact in itself would suggest that apes use a different mechanism than humans that acquire language skills. While children or humans do it by imitating the behavior of adults, children actively experiment with language and develop it before they start producing their first words. Meanwhile, monkeys prefer to use sign or gesture around to express their intention and if it is useful for them. But although apes exhibit some of the behaviors that humans do, there are substantial differences between the way humans and apes use language. Next slide, please. Language origins. The human's ability to speak is an adaptation in the Darwinian sense. Adaptation are characteristic of a species that have been selected for and maintained by environmental factors. That is, at some point in the past, there was such variability within species that some individuals possesses more of the relevant characteristic than others. It is generally agreed that modern language skill, especially the ability to produce spoken language, would not possibly without two characteristics of modern humans. A vocal apparatus that enable the production of many different speech sounds or phonemes, and the ability to exert an excellent degree of control over the vocal apparatus. Thank you. That's all from me. I will give it back to the moderator.
Alright, thank you, Azizah. For the next material, will be delivered by Imbuh Mukti. So, Mukti, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, moderator. So for the next material will be explained by me. That it's about language and thought. So the beginning of the end for Watson theory of language and thought came in 1947 when medical doctors trapped a healthy 34 years old research volunteer to a journey in Salt Lake City and injected him with curare. So curare paralyzed the muscle of the body completely, including the pharyngeal or throat muscles that Watson believed were critical for thought process. Okay, so work linguistic determinism and linguistic relativity. So one of the languages CF proposes is to express our thoughts, and the language we speak may also affect the way we think about and perceive the world. One of Worf's chief motivation in proposing linguistic determinism was an analysis of Eskimo language vocabulary that possibly based on French both, the analysis of Eskimo. So Worf concluded that where English has a single word snow, and Eskimo languages have multiple words. Worf argued that Eskimos had more words for snow because they carved up the concept snow into multiple, distinct subconcepts, assigning a different word to each different subconcept. And then Worf makes a comeback. So the claim that the language or languages we learn determine the ways we think is stable, but it doesn't necessarily follow that language is merely a coded system that neither affects the process by which thinking process nor the nature of the thought manipulated in that process. According Hunt and Agnoli, different languages express numbers in different ways, so the language could influence the way children in a given culture acquire numbers concepts. So the researchers on the relationship between language and thought show that the way your language works doesn't change the way you perceive the world that is. It doesn't give you superhuman perceptual abilities that other people cannot have unless they speak your language, but it may make some cognitive tasks easier. Tasks can be made easier if your language motivates you to pay attention to particular perceptual features of the world, or give you practice performing specific kinds of mental process, or like mental rotation or facial expression recognition. Okay, so I think just that's all. I'll give it back to the moderator.
All right, thank you, Mukti. For the next material will be delivered by Risma Novita. Risma, time is yours.
Thank you, moderator. So I'll explain about the descriptions of the language processing system. Language is treated as a set of mental mechanisms and processes operating largely independently of other cognitive systems. Fodor proposed that language was a mental module, which he defined as a mental ability that is domain-specific, genetically determined with a distinct neural structure and compositionally autonomous. According to Fodor, 1983, part 21. So there are three: domain-specific, distinct neural, and compositionally autonomous. The first one is domain-specific, means that a mental processing unit deals with some kinds of information, but not others. For the example, the visual system responds to light, but not the sound. And the second one is about distinct neural structure. Structure means that particular brain regions are associated with specific compositions. For the example, basic visual processing takes place in the visual cortex, or more complicated visual processing takes place in other brain areas. The third the third is compositionally autonomous, means that a mental processing mechanism does its job independent of what is happening simultaneously in other processing mechanism or encapsulations. That's all from my explanation. I give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the explanation. Maybe that's all from us. Thank you so much for the attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.